You're the guy people call when they need a helping hand, moving furniture, unloading a truck. But lately, your shoulder's been acting up, and you're the one who's calling for help. And that's the moment you realize you can no longer shoulder the load.
The Joint and Spine Center is Cincinnati's leading destination for orthopedic care, with a range of surgical and non-surgical treatments. So when a moment has the power to change the rest of your life, go to the one place with the power to change it for the better, the Christ Hospital Health Network. This changes everything.
The Pound This podcast is brought to you by the Christ Hospital Health Network. This is the Pound This podcast, episode 760, teen podcaster Abby Jones, creating a positive impact for women and girls.
I want to lose weight, but I don't know how to get started.
What should I meal prep every week?
How do I get those sweet booty gains?
Inspiration for your healthy lifestyle. The Pound This podcast with Amanda Valentine.
Thank you so much for listening to the Pound This podcast. I am Amanda Valentine. I am very, very excited to chat with my guest today because I am a big fan of your podcast, which is In Your Element, Abby Jones. Thank you so much for joining me, Abby.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
Yeah, I'm very excited to chat with you. You are just absolutely amazing, and you are, oh my God, I'm almost 3 times older than you are. Oh, I'm like, man, everything that you've accomplished, and you're 15 right now, correct?
16.
Oh, you're 16.
A couple weeks ago, yeah.
Oh, well, happy belated birthday.
Thank you.
Are you driving now?
No, I'm too lazy for that. I haven't gotten around to that yet. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair.
Yeah.
So, but whenever I want to, kind of start where my, I guess, first introduction to what kind of got you where you got on your podcast now is when you were 12, you did a TED Talk, which is pretty intense and insane. So one, what made you decide, hey, I want to audition and do a TED Talk? And what was that process like, getting to do a TED Talk at 12 years old?
Yeah, it was pretty insane, honestly. So my mom is friends with the people who host the events, some of the events here in Colorado. They host TEDx Cherry Creek Women, I can't remember all of the events. But so I did TEDx Cherry Creek Women, I want to say.
Okay.
It's been 4 years now. I can't remember.
I can't remember my TED Talk. No big deal.
Yeah. But so I did mine in 2018, but my mom did one in 2017 about kindness and how kindness, so she struggled with lots of mental issues, depression, anxiety, postpartum, stuff like that. And so she did one about how kindness helped her get through that, being kind to other people, being kind to herself. And so she had those connections to those people. And the next year they had somebody drop out and they invited me to do it. And I had, I want to say 4 or 5 weeks to prepare.
Oh, dang.
Yeah. Normally you get 3 or 4 months, I think.
Yeah, because you have to memorize the whole thing.
So the way that they do it is they tell you not to memorize, these specific organizers, because it comes off too scripted.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, I love the way that they host their events. But since I was 12 and so nervous, they let me memorize mine, which, thank God, I would have absolutely pooped my pants on stage if I couldn't have memorized. It was so nerve-wracking.
I imagine. So tell me about your TED Talk topic and kind of what the backstory of getting to, that topic, and do you still kind of live through that message?
Yeah, so my TED Talk was about social media and how social media impacts teen brains. It also somewhat touched on just smartphones in general, but generally I just say social media because that's mostly what I talked about. But yeah, so I got to talk about my own personal experience with getting I think I had like an iPod Touch at like 9 or 10. And then, oh God, I'm going to sneeze. No, it didn't come.
Okay, yay.
But so I think I got an iPod Touch at around 9 or 10. And then I got social media. Wait, so I did mine at... I have to remember all of my timing here. I probably got social media at 11, I want to say.
I know in your TED Talk you talked about specifically Instagram.
Instagram, yeah. Instagram was the main problem. I would say I got Instagram in 2016.
Okay.
And yeah, it created a lot of problems for me. As I mentioned, depression and anxiety runs in my family, so it already would have been something that probably would have come up for me, but I think it just ended up coming up a lot earlier in my life than it should have because of social media and the impacts that it was having on my already pretty low self-confidence. I was bullied a lot when I was in elementary school because I was a chubby kid. So having social media and seeing all of these other girls who I thought looked so much better than me and had so much more of an exciting life, it was not beneficial to the way I was living, for sure.
Yeah. Oh, I definitely feel it. See, this is where I'm glad I'm old that I didn't have social media because, I had the same thing about being bullied a lot about my body size and my looks and everything else. And I can't even imagine. Social media is hard enough now for me as an adult. I can't imagine being that age and dealing with that. So that sounds pretty intense. So I loved your message in your TED Talk was basically how can you step away from that and be present in like real life because people say so many negative things online that they would never say to your face.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. It's been a really interesting journey with that topic for me throughout past, 6 years, I guess. And now with COVID, everybody clinging to social media for that interaction that we can't necessarily get as much in person. It has been really interesting to go through a journey of trying to figure out my relationship with social media because even now I still don't have a smartphone.
Oh, dang.
I have an Instagram, but I don't use it because I don't have a smartphone.
So what is that like? Imagine. I just know my friends in social circle, and again, I am much older than you are, and everybody's on Snapchat and TikTok. Like, how is it how does that work with you and your friend group and everyone in your life when that's kind of where everybody meets and you're not there?
Yeah, so it's been a very eye-opening experience finding the people who are willing to, like, people are always like, oh my God, texting is so hard, like, just get Snapchat. And I'm like, I literally can't. I don't have a smartphone. So finding the people who are, like, willing to open the Messages app to talk to me.
Oh, no. That's so hard.
Literally. It's insane. But, like, it's been really eye-opening. I'm like, are you really too lazy to just open the Messages app to have a conversation with me? Like, and so I've lost some people because of that, because I don't have social media and because I'm not able to communicate with them through that. But honestly, probably for the better if those people only are willing to live their lives through social media.
Yeah. But it still doesn't take the pain away from it, though.
Yeah. I've lost a good amount of friends throughout my life, though, so it's not to get dark.
No.
It's gotten easier, I guess.
Yeah, I found too that whenever you kind of stand up for what you believe in and you set up some boundaries, You definitely lose people. And again, it's really painful. And it's one of those things where it's like, yes, it's better in the long run. But while you're going through that process, it is not any sort of fun.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah.
And you can't expect everybody to kind of be on the same page that you are. And when they're not, and you kind of learn those lessons. But that's where it's like, man, I'm learning those lessons now and I'm almost 40. So it's like, I guess it's probably, again, better in the long run that you're learning those lessons at 16. And I imagine that's one of the reasons why you're hosting this podcast. Is it's kind of, you have that perspective of you're kind of going through all of this and just how insightful you are on everything that you've lived through so far. And I mean, I guess, so I'll let you kind of describe what your podcast is about and your mission and what your conversations are happening over there.
Yeah. It's so amazing. I love the podcast so much. It's been such an amazing experience. It's, as you mentioned, it's called In Your Element. It's run or founded by one of my good friends and mentors, Mary Allard, and she's just an amazing human being, and I love her. So she has, and Kylie Roswell, who's the other co-founder of the Element Collective, which is the umbrella for In Your Element. But they have allowed me to have this amazing opportunity to be able to host a podcast where I get to talk with women from all around the world who have so many different amazing experiences that have been, let me see how to phrase this. Yeah, so I'm able to ask them questions from a perspective that doesn't normally get to be asked, which is the teen perspective. Normally they're on podcasts or just doing interviews hosted by somebody around their same age. And so being able to interview these women from a teen perspective has been so amazing and so enlightening of their wisdom. And the question that we try to always ask at the end, I think I have forgotten it a couple times.
I know how that goes.
is if you could go back and give your teen self advice or just tell your teen self something, what would you say? And the amount of women who have paused for like 3 minutes and are like, oh my God, I have no idea. It's insane. So being able to I guess allow those women to have a space to look back on their childhood is really amazing, and just to be able to hold that space for them. We had a woman, I just did an interview last week, who was in tears remembering her childhood, and it was beautiful, because I don't think that's something that she normally would get asked about in an interview. So
is that enlightening for you, for being that age, talking to all of these women who are reflecting on the age that you are now? Does that change how you're living your life in the present?
Yes, for sure. I mean, so the woman who was in tears last week, she lost both of her parents in a car accident when she was in her early 20s, I want to say. And so when I asked her that question, what advice would you give to your teen self? She immediately knew the answer and immediately started crying. And she said, I would tell myself to spend more time with my parents and love every second that I spent with them. And I was like, damn. Like, wow. It really hit me, because people say that all the time. They're like, value the moments that you have with your parents and your grandparents while you have them. But hearing it from her perspective, and just the way that she was able to reflect on it and look back on her childhood and her parents was so moving.
So after that recording, did you immediately go hug your parents?
Yes, I did. I had my mom come up actually and talk to the woman because they're old friends, and so I was like, "Mom, come say hi." And then I was like, she made me cry, and it was so sweet. Yeah, so it has. I mean, in the past week, that what she said has just kind of been in the back of my mind whenever I am with my parents or my grandparents in particular.
Yeah. And hopefully, I mean, would you say that your podcast is meant for more teens or for adults or both, or where are you leaning towards? Are you hoping more teens kind of hear that and hear those messages?
Yeah. So it is a teen directed podcast. Like it's directed towards teens, but we have a lot of parents who listen, and parents learn a lot about the way that teens think that isn't normally correctly portrayed in modern society and social media and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that has been awesome to have parents be like, oh yeah, I guess I never thought about how my child handles having their period and like needing to get birth control. It's been awesome to be able to see parents learning stuff like that. So really, I think teens and parents can both learn a whole lot from the podcast.
So are you picking all the topics and kind of brainstorming of what the direction that you want it to go in?
So Mary and I both bring in interviewees, and like my mom and my dad both know some amazing women who they are able to get to agree to come on the podcast. So we just kind of figure out what that person wants to talk about. And then I come up with questions based on what they're comfortable talking about.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I just listened to, I really wanted to bring this up because I've been listening to your podcast. And one of the episodes that you did earlier this month, you did with Mary, and I found very personally impactful, where you were talking about creating something out of nothing and talking about creating this podcast. I've been doing this podcast for 4 years, over 4 years now.
Oh, wow.
And so to kind of hear the perspective of somebody who is a podcaster and everything that you've learned of the interview skills and how much work goes into it and how much you learn from people and how many different multitasking elements there are to it, because I've run into, and before I've done this podcast, I worked in radio for years. So I started working in radio when I was 16. And that's what I always wanted to do. And then left that a couple of years ago to do this full time. And I think it's one of those things, I think that there's so many podcasts out there and people listen to podcasts and you listen, it's a half hour long and you think, well, that's a half hour's worth of work. And there's so many people I don't think respect the time and the talent it takes to be a listener and to interview somebody and to guide somebody to tell their best story, and all of the back end work of scheduling interviews, asking questions, knowing where you want to go, and before you even get into editing and show notes and all this other stuff. So to hear your episode talking with Mary, touching on that a little bit and everything, how you've learned and grown just from doing your podcast for the past year and interviewing these women and the skill set you're learning, I personally found, for me, very validating. and it was very informative. I was like, oh, she gets it. And it is, I mean, it is definitely time and work. And it is absolutely so rewarding to talk to amazing people with amazing stories and to be able to give them a space to share that. We're not, they're not always given that space to kind of share with the world their magic and talents. So I want to thank you for your podcast, because that that I thought was really great. And I also want you to know that I recognize just how much time and attention and work it goes into creating a podcast and talking to all these women, especially. I'm sure it has to be some level of intimidation of talking to women that have done some really crazy things. And you're like, okay, well, I got to be able to pull that out of them and make this sound good. And you have to be able to listen back to it without being like, ugh. Like,
Exactly.
why did I say it that way? I should have asked this. So, I mean, I hope that you're getting that same sort of feedback from other people, that you're doing a really fantastic job and you're doing amazing work.
Yeah, I've been really blessed and really lucky to be able to have the community that I have with Mary, because thank God she does all of the editing. I absolutely could not. She has her co-host of her other podcast, the Third Place podcast, David, and they do the editing for my podcast. And so all that I have to do is come up with questions and be able to talk to these women, and it's the perfect job for me.
That's awesome.
I love talking to people. I'm quite social, so being able to find ways, as you said, to be able to draw these stories out of people has been so interesting and such a learning experience. Like, interviewing is so hard. It's so hard. It's crazy because you have to be able to listen and be present with the person and figure out how to move on to your next question and how to figure out how to edit and how to get the story that you're hoping you can get out of. It's absolutely chaotic. And I also have ADHD. So like all of it together, oh my God, it's
same, man.
It's bad. Yeah.
No, it's definitely one of those things with practice. And that's where I'm
God,
like,
yeah.
I have lots of practice because I try to make it my goal to go to not do any of just editing to the interview. So I like to just keep it as fluid as possible. And so that does require a ton of listening, dropping pins in conversations and coming back and thinking about those sorts of things, which it makes it hard, which I want to ask you about listening to other podcasts. Because once I think that you've done it and you've invested time into it and you care about it and you're passionate about it, and then you listen to other podcasts and you can hear they're not actively listening. They're just going from a script. They're going from their list of questions. They bypassed, there's 5 different questions you could have asked out of that paragraph they just said, and you went right to your next set of questions, and you're like, well, what about this? And then it makes you realize like, oh wow, well, I do that. And it just teaches you so much good life and conversation skills outside of just recording on a podcast. It's like when you actually talk to somebody face to face, you can have this back and forth conversation, and it makes things a little bit easier.
Yeah, absolutely. Something that I had to learn with podcasting pretty quickly was being able to mirror what the person has said, because it makes them so much more comfortable in the interview and it allows them to say more and just be more comfortable with you. And that life skill and that communication skill is so valuable outside of podcasting. Just having a conversation with somebody, being able to mirror and make that person more comfortable is so important. And I did not do that for the first few months of my podcast, so it's been quite interesting listening to the development of me figuring out like how to do better.
That's life, you know what I mean?
Well, yeah, but it's just been interesting because it's documented right there,
right?
Like through audio. It's been an awesome, amazing experience, and I wouldn't trade it for anything.
So do you listen to any other podcasts?
Yes, but mostly just like pretty popular ones. I listen to Smartless with Will Arnett and Jason Bateman and Sean Hayes. Love that one. They're so funny. But every now and then, now I pick up and I'm like, oh, they just cut that out. Like, that was just an edit right there. Like, or one of them rambles on when he's asking his questions, and they always come at him for it. And it's so funny because I'm like, yep, I used to do that. I still do that.
Yeah.
But, and it's hard to not do that. So I see him and I'm like, I get you. I see you with your rambling questions.
So where would you like to take your podcast in the future? Do you have any like dream guests or women that you would want to talk to?
I really want to talk to Michelle Obama.
Oh.
Like, I don't know. She's one of my favorite human beings in the world. And that's like the top tier for me.
Oh man, I feel like there's got to be some sort of way, some sort of petition we can make to make that happen for you. But see, you're not on TikTok. I feel if you had a viral TikTok, we could make it happen.
I know.
You're on your flip phone over here.
I know. It's a problem. I've been telling my parents.
That's awesome. So I guess to kind of go a little bit backwards now, tell me about the Element Collective. So we were talking about Mary, and that's what she started, and that's what the podcast is an umbrella of. So what is that mission, and how do you fit into that?
Yeah, so the Element Collective is an app. Oh my God, I'm going to sneeze again.
I'm not editing
Oh my
this
God.
I'm not editing this. I'm keeping all of this.
My sneeze won't come out. That's so angry. Okay. So the Element Collective is an app on, I think it's on like the App Store. I don't know.
It's everywhere where you listen to podcasts. Or no, that's your podcast.
No,
not Element Collective. It has its own app, correct?
Yes. Yeah. But since I don't know anything about like smartphones, I can't tell you what the app stores are because I don't know.
Oh, that would be the Google Play Store or your Apple.
Yeah. Yeah. You can find it. I mean, also there's a website, elementcollective.com, I want to say.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. elementcollective.com it's ELLEMENT. And it's basically just an app where you get to be able to create a community for high school aged girls, middle school aged girls who aren't taught things like mental health and reproductive health and meditation and yoga and just generally how to cope in this ever-changing world. So it's just a way for amazing people to be able to connect, and we have a bunch of different mentors on the app who are teaching things like yoga and oh God, I don't remember the last time I talked about Element Collective actually, because normally I just talk about the podcast, but we have a lot of women who are experts in their field who come on and teach whatever it is that they are experts in. It's amazing, and it's an amazing community for women and girls, because it's not just teenage girls, it's those women who are there we go. Gotta switch my tabs. It's for those women who are experts in their field. And so
yeah, and that's why I just you're under an umbrella of that, of kind of talking to some of these women, and it's basically a place for teenage girls, like you said, of mental, physical wellness. And so I wanted to ask you, being that age, because I know at that age, if there's something like this, like your podcast was available, if Element Collective was available to me at that age, I think that would have really been game changing for me. Because I didn't have a great childhood. And I think that because I didn't have like any mentors in my life or anybody to kind of educate me in anything like that. I think that would have been huge for me personally, but I can say that now as an adult. So,
Right.
I mean, as obviously you're a part of this and creating content for this, do you feel like people in your age group gravitate towards like things like your podcast and the things that Element Collective are doing, that girls can really feel like, okay, I have this safe space. I can get this information because maybe I'm not getting it from my home or school?
I think it immensely depends on the girl.
Okay.
I know a lot of people who are like, yes, this is absolutely amazing. I love it so much. Like, this is so helpful. I've learned so much. But there's also a lot of girls who aren't necessarily willing to go out of their comfort zone and learn things like that. Because it's just, they're like, well, if it's not taught in a school, then why would I need to learn about it?
Yeah. I hear that.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, what's amazing is it's there for the people that do want to utilize it. And then maybe it's like, maybe this year you're not vibing with it, but next year it's your vibe. And
right.
That's what the whole thing about growing is, just kind of learning along the way. And it's nice to have something that's there if you need it, because that's where, having these conversations, and I don't know if you've ever done anything with like Girls on the Run and stuff like that, of doing some things with them, of like, and having like tough conversations. Like I had some podcasts a couple years ago where I talked to tween girls about body image and things like that, and talking to therapists of, their perspectives and everything, where it's like, well, at that you could say, well, talk to your parents about it. And I'm like, well, I absolutely would not have. Like there is these topics kind of like what you're talking about in your podcast of like periods and sexual health and mental health are things that's like, yeah, I'm not comfortable talking to my own family about that. But if I had an outside mentor, if I had this place that felt like it was separate from that sort of life, I like a Girls on the Run, like an Element Collective of like, oh, I could absolutely get that information from somebody else when I wouldn't necessarily like go to my mom for it. And I feel like there's a lot of girls that feel that way, where it's kind of like you don't feel comfortable until you find that kind of safe person or spot. And then once you find that, then you can open up and come out of your comfort zone. But that comfort zone or that safe spot's going to be different for every single individual.
Exactly. Yeah. It's been really hard. I mean, I had the same thing. Luckily, my mom and I are really close and I'm really comfortable with her. And that's always been a thing throughout my life. But trying to help my friends find that person, and for some of my friends, I am that person. So trying to help them find an adult who can help them get through things like that and who has the experience with coping with more difficult things. It's been difficult because, I mean, people are like, well, just talk to your school counselor or like get a therapist. And you're like, it's not that easy.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of people have absolutely no relationship with their school counselor. And that's fair. Like, you don't really know that person, and you need to have a rapport and a relationship in order to be able to truly trust somebody. And so that's what we're trying to do, is just be able to be like, this is who we are. So if you choose to trust us or not, that's okay. But like, we're out here for you.
Yeah.
And we're just here to help.
Yeah. And that's amazing. So again, give me all of the information, all the details where everybody can go find your podcast and start listening immediately.
Yeah, so it's on Spotify, Apple Music, basically anywhere you can get your podcasts from. It's called In Your Element, ELLEMENT. And it should be put out by Element Collective, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's also elementcollective.com, same thing, ELLEMENT. And that's more about the app itself, but there's also a podcast tab where you can learn more about me and more about the podcast and the other amazing teens who are behind the app. We have a teen who directed the music for the podcast, and so you can learn more about her there.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. Well, thank you so much for what you're doing. I think it's life-changing for a lot of people, including yourself. And
yes,
I just appreciate the work so much, and I'm so excited to see what you do next. And I'm very excited for when you have Michelle Obama on your podcast. I will be here for that.
I think she absolutely would do it. I think she's the kind of person who would jump right on that. So
I agree. If there's anyone listening to this right now that has
who has a connection
to Michelle Obama, let's get this party started. Wouldn't that be amazing if that happened?
Oh my God, that would be so awesome.
Oh my God, what are you going to do? You're going to freak out. You're going to have
I would die. I would immediately.
Don't go dying. Then you can't do the interview.
I would do it afterwards then.
Okay. Well, we'll see what we can do. We can cross our fingers, and I think that doing what you're doing and everything that you've accomplished so far at 16, I think that's absolutely in your future, and I think that you can accomplish anything that you want to, and if that's what you really want, I think that you can make that happen. So I'm excited to keep listening and to follow your journey and see what you do, because I think that, again, you're going to change a lot of lives and impact this world in a really positive way.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Abby Jones, thank you so much for coming on my podcast.
Thank you for having me.
AmandaValentineBites.com